Everyone, thanks so much for tuning in to this latest episode. Today, I am joined by Alex Ray, who is a principal at PSL, which is Pioneer Square Labs, right?
Yep.
Okay, awesome. And we're going to talk about a lot of different things. But Alex, why don't you just tell folks a little bit about your career background and how did you get into building startups?
Yeah. Let me start by telling a little bit about PSL, because I think that'll give some good context too. So PSL is an early stage VC firm here in Seattle. We've been investing in early stage companies in the Pacific Northwest, mostly in Seattle for the past decade. We invest in companies as early as the idea and up to the Series A, and love to lead rounds. And so try to meet every great entrepreneur in the Pacific Northwest. Anyone that is up here should come and find us. What makes us different than most VC firms is we also build startups. So we try to launch about 5 startups a year, where we as the PSL team go from 0 to 1. We literally call customers, build the first prototype, figure out how to get it to market, and then end up spinning it out and turning it into a startup itself, funded by external VCs. Over the past decade, we've launched about 45 companies that have all raised external funding. And so my day-to-day job is founding companies. I work as a solo founder most of the time, launching things from 0 to 1. Before I was at PSL, I spent about a decade in the early stage startup world. So I started a company in college that helped people find jobs that they would like. Ran that for a few years. Worked in an early stage VC firm in Mississippi, which is where I'm from. Went and got an MBA at Harvard, and then started another company and went through Y Combinator. So basically my entire career has been building companies. I learned how to code in middle school, and I've been coding for basically every company that I've started. And then also do sales and a little bit of design, although not very well.
Awesome. Well, it sounds like your career path has been kind of magical, right? It's like, as I hear you kind of tell your story, I can't help but think that is exactly the type of experience that I love, right? Starting stuff from scratch, being able to now kind of work on a variety of different projects. You've been a founder multiple times, so I think you're really well suited for this role. And that's really cool that the fund works like that, because not everyone can do that, right? There's some really great investors who focus on being great investors, but to be able to actually be an investor and understand the operator sort of like founder experience and mesh those two is really exciting and pretty unique. Yeah. Speaking of launching companies, what are you seeing right now? If we honed in on the incubation piece, right? Like, what are you seeing that is working? What has become more challenging since you've been doing this for several years now, especially in this world where you can vibe code things? Like, does that make it easier, harder? The fact that you can move faster. I mean, I just built an application the other day, and I was shocked at what I was able to do. I basically rebuilt something that I had taken about 2.5 years to build in the past. And I built it in literally, it's weird to say, but I rebuilt 90% of it in 2 days.
Yeah, man, that's exactly what we're seeing. I'd say over the past 2 years, everything has changed, especially in the past 6 months. So 2 years ago, when we launched a company, I'd spent several days hacking together a prototype, trying to figure out how to get the minimal viable product, right, the MVP out. And it would take me days, right? Then I started using more and more LM assisted coding and vibe coding. And, a year ago, it'd probably take me a day or two to get a very basic MVP out. Something about 6 months ago just totally changed. And since then, I've been trying to launch basically a new product every week. On the side of actually trying to launch companies, just to make sure that I'm really deep in the building. At this point, if I write a clear spec, I think I can launch a new product every day. And that just changes incubation in a lot of ways, right? It changes how companies launch. It changes, honestly, it makes 2 things hard. One, it makes it really hard to find customers, because when there's so much out there, there's so much noise, right? And it's hard for anyone to sort through and see what's good. It's also really hard to figure out how to have a competitive advantage, right? So let's say you build a company, you get some users. why can't everyone else who can vibe code just build the same thing? So for example, last year, towards the end of 2025, I built a customer support tool, right? There's a lot out there, but I thought there's an underserved need in startup founders where a lot of the tools that are out there are a bit too complicated. It'd be great if you had a basic customer support that did a mix of kind of upselling when people were trying to buy, as well as like real product support. And so I built that. Took a few weeks to get right. I sold it to a bunch of founders. It was working pretty well. And then as I thought about turning it into a true spin out, right, a true business and a startup to raise money, I couldn't, right? Like I killed it. I decided that it was easy enough for me to build and it's getting easier all the time. And anyone could build their own, or I don't know, any of the tools out there could compete. And so I think it's hard to figure out how companies might have staying power now.
As you were sort of telling the story, I kept thinking about something that I've been trying to figure out the last, let's just say, 2 years or so, and it's really accelerated the urgency to figure it out. That is over the last year or so, and that is what you mentioned is like, what's our differentiator? What's our moat, right? And I've literally interviewed countless founders and startups about this and investors, and I've come to a somewhat of a not a fixed conclusion, but kind of where I'm at right now, which are a couple of things, including the fact that brand is I think more important than ever. Sure, someone could like vibe code some design or whatever, right? Faster than it's ever been possible, but to actually execute a successful go-to-market or brand building exercise over a long period of time, you look at folks like Gong, for example. Yeah. Shout out to Udi and that team there. They've been able to do a really great job of building brand and kind of doing some of these like consumerish things for many, many years. And now, do they have the best tech? I don't want to speak negatively about the tool, but I don't know. I've seen other tools in that space, and specifically the call recording functionality, right? That is much easier, PLG, cheaper, etc. That feel like better products. But every client or startup that I've worked with over the last several years, and even within the last 14 months or so, they won't look at anything else. They're just like Gong, right? Even if it's like 10x more expensive. And so that just points to like something that I think consumer markets have known for a long time, but now B2B, in my opinion, like you have to do it. And so that's one of, I think, the moats there that truly exists. The other one is just go to market in general, right? I know when I got into the technology space, 20 something years ago, I remember sitting back, and I was non-technical. I wasn't as smart as you, Alex, being able to build stuff, writing code. I just didn't have the attention span. I tried to pick up Python a couple of times. But I said, you know what, let me lean into what I naturally did, which was Yap, right? And so I got into sales and marketing and that kind of stuff. And I remember going out to Silicon Valley, let's say around 2004, 2005, as I was trying to launch a startup at the time. And I remember there was this kind of culture of like, let's get rid of salespeople, right? Let's forget, we don't need sales. We don't need marketing. Let's like the product will sell itself, sure. Essentially, right? And I think that now in this world where, to your point, you can build products in a matter of hours, these other things are more important. So I wanted to kind of just get your take on what you think moats are now from your perspective, both being able to understand the founder experience, but also now investing in these startups.
Yeah, it's a great question that I'm trying to figure out right now too. I don't have a great answer right now. I'm imagining, when I think about actually backing a startup, I ask myself, okay, what if all of a sudden their GitHub was totally public and anyone could just download all their code and run it? Would they still have a business? And I think if the answer is no, if the answer is if someone downloaded their whole GitHub, it would just be, the business would be worthless, then I don't think you can invest anymore. And I think that means that certain types of certain types of moats are more effective than ever, like a network effect, for example. You can imagine if Airbnb opened up their entire code base and you could download everything that they run, you wouldn't have the properties on it, you wouldn't have people using it, you wouldn't have kind of the distribution advantage that they have today. And so I'm looking for companies that have some sort of advantage like that, where if I all of a sudden opened up all their code, it'd still be fine. Other than that, it's harder to figure out how people are going to sustain advantages. There's something about the pain from having to actually set up and maintain the network. There's something about the pain from having to set up integrations. But other than that, I don't know what moats look like. And on a different point, like you talked about distribution a little bit and sales and marketing and brand. I think, a decade ago, everybody thought cold email and software that finds customers is the way. I don't know the last time I responded to a cold email, right? I get so many now that are tailored to me. I'm sure it's AI tailoring it, that I just delete them all, right? And so the only way to get in touch with me is a warm intro or a referral from a friend, or I meet you at an event. I've heard from a bunch of founders that all of a sudden events are the go-to-market hack. People are taking, people are going to events, people are literally taking potential customers to dinner. It's like we're in the Blue Blazer era again, where people are going out to steak dinners all the time. It just feels like a major shift from where software was a decade ago.
Yeah, I mean, I've seen the same thing, and some of these more traditional, to your point, some of these more traditional plays are now surfacing. And I don't know if you're familiar with like Gary Vaynerchuk and some of his content, and I know it's pretty bold at times, but one of the things he's been talking a lot about is the analog world coming back, right? And like you're seeing, I don't know what generation the title is of this new latest generation he was referring to, but basically the folks in high school and in early college and these sort of ages, and how they're like hungry now for these offline experiences. And I think we saw after the lockdowns, a couple of years ago, we were all cooped up in our homes, and it, I think, drove a thirst for wanting to meet people in person and start to engage. And now this remote work kind of environment that is pretty prevalent, and it's arrived, and I don't know that it's going anywhere. There's probably some hybrid experiences. That's another topic that I think we can get into, just kind of like what roles and what types of companies do well within those environments, because I would argue that not every company should be fully remote, but that also, I think, has driven this like thirst for wanting to meet folks, and communities have really, really exploded. I know a couple folks, friends of mine who are founders of GTM or go-to-market specific communities, some who have sold them, right? You see what HubSpot has been doing with buying up media, startups or companies, and really being able to acquire those audiences. And so to your point, like I'm seeing the same thing. It's, you need to really be able to get in front of folks in a different way. And I just got to say, I've actually never in 25, 26 years have never responded to a cold email, and I've sent tons of them, and they have worked. So I don't know why they worked back then when I was doing sales. But I wanted to also dive into one of your investments that I'm working with now, Gumshoe, and that team is incredible for a lot of reasons. What was the inspiration to launch that business, and why do we think that it's doing so well? I obviously have kind of an inside view. You do as well, obviously. But I'm biased for the audience out there. But I wanted to get your perspective. Again, what was the inspiration to build it, and why do you think it's doing so well?
Yeah, maybe I can just give a sense overview for anybody watching. Like Gumshoe is a GEO platform that helps make sure your brand shows up in AI search. So if somebody asks ChatGPT or reads the Google AI overview, Gumshoe makes sure that your brand is in that when they're looking for a product. And so I started working with this concept in the PSL studio where we build companies. about 2 years ago. So our team sits on the board of a bunch of companies, a few of which had started seeing an initial decline in organic traffic. And it surprised us, right? Like this company had steady month over month growth for its entire life, where it was using SEO as its main like go-to-market strategy. And we thought it was weird. Why would it have suddenly declined after years and years of success? And we started looking into it, and we figured out that people were ending up with the Google AI overviews and not clicking through to the site. And as startup builders, as founders and hackers, we know that when a new distribution channel emerges, you got to jump in on it, right? And so we started looking into how to game the AI overviews and ChatGPT searches. And once we started looking at it, we realized, oh my God, like this is the next frontier. This is how people are going to find products, not only today, where humans use ChatGPT to find products, but if you ask ChatGPT to help you plan a trip, pick an outfit, find a shirt, like ChatGPT is going to go and buy a lot of those products in the future. We actually, as I was like doing initial diligence on it, I talked to somebody that works at an industrial company. And he said that they had recently set up a new office and they needed to build a test bench, right? Where you have a bunch of these little electronic components to make sure that your hardware is working. He said they went to ChatGPT to make the initial bill of materials, and it came back with 100 different items that they should buy. And they just clicked buy. I think that moment we were like, oh my God, this is going to be the next big company. And so we started building it, we launched it, we were talking to CMOs and had immediate pull for a solution to this. People were seeing it across the board, traffic was going away, people were using AI search to find products. Everybody wanted it. And so, yeah, we went really deep on it. And I mean, that's been 2 years now almost. We ended up finding like a great team to work with on it. So Todd Sawicki and Patrick O'Donnell are both longtime Seattle entrepreneurs who've built great companies in similar spaces. Todd has been in marketing tech for 20 years and has built company after company that has just excelled. And so, yeah, we've been working with them for the past few years on this. And like, I think that their approach to it, the impact that they're seeing, really like, that's why they're so relevant. That's why they're doing such a great job.
Yeah, and one thing I would like to add is the market pull, right? Like I've done, unfortunately, I've done a lot of different startups. My last startup, I love my old co-founders and we had a great time. But one of the biggest things, and we followed like every fundamental, right? And I think we talked about this when we first met, did the customer discovery. I mean, we did, I don't know, maybe 12 to 1,500 interviews over the course of the business, tried to follow every fundamental. And at the end of the day, it just wasn't a good business. There wasn't enough demand, right? There wasn't enough market pull. And one of the things that is so clear with Gumshoe is the market pull is clear, right? It's there, folks want it. And they're willing to pay, and it's no longer kind of like this thing where maybe we'll look into it. We have to be on AI, right? To your point, this clickless marketing or zero-click marketing stuff is happening. These for the folks out there, if you're not aware of this, I mean, look at your own behavior, right? Just think about how you're interacting with these models, ChatGPT, Claude, Perplexity, etc. It's eating up the top of the funnel, and it's just going to continue to move down. We saw, I think it was about a year and a half ago or so, Google start to talk about and release their agent-to-agent kind of framework or protocol, right? Sure, it hasn't taken off yet, right? But some iteration of that is going to start to happen. And so I think that from my perspective, when I looked at the business, I said, this is real. It's not going away. Right? It has improved our experiences as consumers and business professionals in 1,000 different ways. And you're just going to see this become more and more important, especially when agents start to transact. Imagine a world for the CMOs out there. Imagine a world where your client's buyer agent is going to, your to an LLM or to your site, and they need to be able to understand and transact, right? That this is incredibly important to be able to optimize the way that your content is set up and making sure you're visible on these LLMs and the agents can actually find it. And all this content is written in a way that it resonates and will be recommended to purchase. And then imagine where that transaction just happens, right? When we get to that point. So again, that was kind of my thinking. And the other thing is, to our point around like moats and software, we've been so concerned about the application layer getting eaten up by agents and being able to vibe code and et cetera, like we were talking about. I think this is one of these unique businesses where, like, because it's tying into these various models, right? It has to be kind of self-sustaining, right? ChatGPT is not going to build something that's going to plug into Claude, right? Like, that just makes sense. So it's one of those really unique businesses also that I think have the chance of being, sort of relevant and sustaining itself outside because of that too.
Totally. And to add to that, in addition to, the model providers won't do this. Also, like, the Gumshoe data, I think, is the best data you can get on LLM visibility, right? Like, they've been tracking tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, millions of prompts over the past 2 years. Like, if you started a GEO company today, you could never catch up. And that gives their team of data scientists a lot of ability to, test and experiment and measure and see what actually influences the LLMs. Whether or not the labs tell you suggestions for how to influence it, you can reverse engineer it pretty well. And Gumshoe has a team of AI researchers doing that, right? And like, that's a great moat.
Yeah, absolutely. And the persona-based approach, right? Yeah. I think that's one of the real unique sort of attributes that I saw early on, but also as I started to talk to the market, that's immediately what stands out. And what's wild, Alex, is that so many organizations, I've talked to Todd and the team about this multiple times, so many organizations just don't have solid personas, which blows my mind how you can actually execute any sort of commercial effort without having very solid personas. And of course, if you're in B2B, the ICP piece, right? So which is related. So last question here before I let you go, Alex. When you think about founder sort of, kind of that founder fit, right? That founder market fit, that founder product fit, what are the things that come to mind to you when trying to kind of figure that out and define that?
Yeah, man, that's a great question too. I think for founder market fit, for me, it's really important that a founder is a domain expert. It's really important to me that they understand their domain. And I know there've been founders that have built great companies in domains that are new to them, but if you don't understand a domain very deeply, I think you need to spend the first month just trying to become an expert. Do your own diligence. Talk to a bunch of experts so that you understand how it works. Otherwise, you're going to build something nobody wants, right? And that's the ultimate failure point for a startup. You mentioned a few minutes ago, like, pull, right? Customer pull. I think, like, the thing that I think is most important in the studio when we're building a company is talking to a potential customer just about the pain point, not about the solution, and saying, hey, like, is this a real problem? Why is this a problem? What are the implications of this problem? What are you doing to try to solve it? If people don't care about the problem, then it's probably not a great business. And if you don't have domain expertise to know if it's a real problem, then you're way more likely to build something no one wants. It's funny, I actually see founders often pivot from a space that they know very well into a space that they don't know as well. I think because they understand, the skeletons and the warts and the bad parts of their own domain, and the other domain looks so much better. The grass is always greener, right? Like, oh my gosh, like, what if I was building in a space I don't know anything about? And it almost always is a bad idea.
Alex, thank you so much for joining us on the show today. I really appreciate it. It was a lot of fun, and it's been awesome to get to know you over the last couple months. I am looking forward to meeting you in person and continuing to build our friendship. If folks wanted to follow you on social media, maybe learn more about kind of what you're up to and your insights, what are the best URLs or channels to reach you?
Yeah, great question. I'm most active on LinkedIn. I'm also happy to chat. You can email me as alex@psl.com and I'll try to respond. Mention this show or else I'm going to think it's a cold email and not respond. So, but generally happy to meet founders, happy to meet people who are excited to be building at the frontier. So
Awesome.
And thanks for having me on the show. It's been a great time talking to you and excited to continue following.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much. It's certainly a pleasure. Have a great day.
You too.